Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Schmozcast. I am Chandler here in the 103.5 The Sun Community Radio Station with Anthony and Andre. Fellas, how we doing this evening?
I'm just new boot goofing over here.
Just new boot goofing. Couldn't be any better.
Just goofing in my new boots.
I can't follow that, so I'm just doing good.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you can't do much better than new boot goofing, so that was the right path that you went down there. This week, we're going to be discussing Backlash and the fallout, and then Raw and SmackDown last night. We had some qualifying matches for Money in the Bank, which is coming up in 6 weeks from this Sunday. So just to run down the card from Backlash this past Sunday, we had on the kickoff show, we had Ruby Riott versus Bayley, where Ruby Riott won the match. Then we had the Intercontinental Championship match where Seth Rollins defended against The Miz, and Seth Rollins retained. Then we had the Raw Women's Championship where Nia Jax defended against Alexa Bliss, and Nia successfully retained her title. Next up, we had United States Championship match where Jeff Hardy defended against Randy Orton, and Jeff Hardy came out the victor there. Then in a really fun, weird, entertaining, interesting, weird, did I say weird already, segment, we had Elias give one of his world-renowned concerts where he got interrupted by No Way Jose and the Conga Line, Bobby Roode, Titus Worldwide, Breezango, Rusev Day, and The New Day. Then back to the action, we had Daniel Bryan versus Big Cass. Both of these competitors' first singles match back from injury, and Daniel Bryan got the victory there. Then next we had the SmackDown Live Women's Championship where Carmella defended her newly won SmackDown Live Women's Championship against Charlotte Flair and got the clean victory. Carmella beat Charlotte clean. Next up we had a no DQ match for the WWE Championship where AJ Styles versus Shinsuke Nakamura squared off, and the no disqualification match ended in a countout. We'll get back to that. Then we had Braun Strowman and Bobby Lashley versus Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, where Braun and Lashley got the victory via pinfall. And then to end the night, we had Roman Reigns and Samoa Joe go one-on-one, and Reigns got the victory there. Personally, the card stacked up really well. I thought they did a decent enough job with building up the matches, especially considering most of these matches were built up before even the Greatest Royal Rumble, which was the Friday before this. So I thought they did a good job building the card. The card itself was on paper a great card. Not the best pay-per-view, not the best outing for the first dual branded pay-per-view. You guys, what are your thoughts on this pay-per-view? And then we'll get into some of the matches more.
Not the best pay-per-view by a long shot. It was very disappointing, considering it was the first dual branded pay-per-view. It was hyped up the way it was. The card was super stacked, and it failed to deliver. There was some good action here and there. The IC title match was the match of the night by far. Daniel Bryan versus Big Cass was good. I wish they had a little more time, though. And other than that, everything... Well, the AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura match was good, except for the finish, so that kind of watered that one down. So it was just very disappointing, and then I don't even want to get into yet the end of the show with the main event, and I'm not gonna get into that until we start talking about that, but you all know how I feel about that.
Frony, I know that you didn't really catch the entire pay-per-view. Of what you saw, how do you think that this pay-per-view held up?
Yeah, I was able to see everything up to and including Daniel Bryan and Big Cass. Without seeing the completion of the pay-per-view, I think it's hard to give a really well-rounded review of everything that happened beginning to finish. But I could tell by just watching that first match that it was going to be hard for anyone else to compete with that kind of match. I think if you scramble things around, just knowing what we know now, obviously days later, having watched the pay-per-view, and for me, at least the first few matches a couple times, had that match gone on last between Seth Rollins and The Miz, maybe that changed people's mind, because I think sometimes when you walk away from a pay-per-view that was okay but had a great main event, I think that changes things quite a bit. That's not the case here because the best match went on first, so in that regard, everything was downhill from there. But that's not to be too disparaging, because right now I think if let's fast forward to January, or let's view this as the first a little bit more than a third of the year for wrestling, and add into this, which is still early May, that if we were to count down right now just what we have so far of the matches of the year, whether it be WWE only or WWE included and everything else, that this Seth Rollins and The Miz match would be maybe number 3, right behind 2 different Johnny Gargano matches so far for the year, and a couple other matches that were really good, like that ladder match from the New Orleans TakeOver. But man, that Miz Rollins match was unbelievable, and you can damn sure bet your bottom dollar that when we do get the best of 2018 WWE Network collection, that this match is going to be right on there for sure, because what a spectacular spectacle these two put on. And it shouldn't be surprising to anybody because they're so talented, and these are 2 of the best in-ring storytellers. And plus then you add on what The Miz can do outside of the ring with Miz TV, on the microphone, Miz with or without Miz Taraj, it doesn't matter. And but for them to tell this well of a story, this good of a story, and being on separate brands, to me, it says a lot about each of these guys, that they didn't need the same kind of buildup that you would regularly have. I know it's not that far removed from a superstar shakeup, but I do think this is a feather in the cap a little bit for saying what these guys can do, putting on a great match without having your standard build every Monday or every Tuesday for a month to 6 weeks beforehand. That's just how good these guys are.
Seth Rollins is Seth freaking Rollins, and he's Monday Night Rollins, so we all know how good he is. And The Miz has been steadily climbing, but he is ready for the main event scene. He's ready for a long main event push, and dare I say, he is ready for a world title reign once again. And it will not be a flop like the last one was. I'm getting more impressed with Miz every single time I see him, whether it's on the mic, which I've known for a long time, in the ring, which he's gotten better. Maybe he hasn't gotten better. Maybe he's grown on me more so than anything else. But that match and then his performance against Jeff Hardy on Tuesday Night SmackDown Live, man, Miz is one of my favorites to win. I mean, Braun's my favorite to win the Money in the Bank match, but it's a ladder match. Anything can happen, and Miz is right under. And I'd love to see him cash in and get that title and hang on to it for a while, because he could do... I'm getting way ahead of myself, but props to Miz, basically. All that to say props to Miz.
I want to ask Andre, have you seen the Dave Meltzer rating for this? Because I just wonder, and I was talking about this with Chandler on Monday night, we were watching Raw, that I would imagine that this is going to be the Miz's highest rated match of his career in terms of the Dave Meltzer star rating. Do we have an idea of what that is yet?
I have not looked that up yet. No, that's a interesting one. I'll have to check that out. I don't have battery on my phone right now, so I couldn't do it at the moment, but I'll definitely check that out and maybe post it on Twitter or something.
I definitely feel like whatever the rating is, this has to be the highest rated match that he would have in his career. And it's not even just because Rollins carried him through this match. The past couple of weeks, I feel like I've really been saying that, this is the best Seth Rollins that we've ever seen in the WWE, and that he's back on his game, and that he's at the top of the mountain right now. The same can be said about The Miz, and it's kind of easy to lose sight in that because of how awesome Rollins has been as of late. But The Miz is he's just as good right now as Seth Rollins is. Like for where they are in their careers, they're both at the top of their game. And as you said, Andre, I'm just more and more impressed with The Miz every time I see him have a match in the ring. Yes, it's almost a gimme at this point, knowing how good he is on the microphone with his backstage segments and his Miz TV segments. But the fact that he's that good on the mic, and he's absolutely 100% backing it up in the ring, it's unbelievable, especially considering where he came from and just the reception from the crowd that he had for a long time. And I know that the reception of the crowd doesn't necessarily have anything to do with him as a performer in the ring, but sitting at home watching TV, that does play a factor into it, because if the crowd isn't behind you, it's going to be a lot less likely that I'm behind you watching from home. But the fact that and I mentioned this to Frony a little bit earlier too, is that he's still kind of booked as a heel, but he's not really. Actually, he's not a heel anymore. Like, he's over with the crowd. He's He's over with the crowd. He's doing amazing stuff in all of his matches. It's hard not to get behind him right now, and he's just been doing such a great job. And as I said, him and Rollins both, like they're on another level compared to where they had been in the past, in my opinion.
No, absolutely. These two guys are, I mean, like I said, you put this in the main event. I think it changes the pay-per-view probably completely. But these guys, do you think it hurt the pay-per-view in some ways to have this best match going first? It's not like you can always know that, but in some ways, if you're WWE, you should have an idea that if you're going to put Rollins and Miz where he's at right now, that this was certainly a possibility. And maybe that means that you need to shake up the card a little bit and change some things around to get the crowd back hot when you need them to near the end of the pay-per-view. Having
watched the entire pay-per-view and looking back on it now, however many days, 5 days later, it with the match going down the way that it did, it absolutely hurt the pay-per-view because, as you said, Frony, like it was all downhill from there. Like you start the show off with the highest of highs, and I completely get putting on a good match to begin with to get the crowd hyped and ready for the pay-per-view. But if you're going to do that, then you're going to have to follow up. And there was just little to no follow-up with the amount of excitement and skill that was in this Intercontinental title match.
Yes, it hurt the show, but it didn't have to. If they would have booked the rest of the show properly, and I say that as a biased fan, of course, but the reaction seems to be pretty set across the board as far as fans go, at least online. But if the rest of the card was actually booked properly, if the AJ and Shinsuke match had not ended the way it did and actually had a legit victor, and if Roman didn't do what Roman always does, maybe it'd be looked at differently, even with Seth and The Miz going on first. But it was just the rest of the card and some of the decisions made just ruined the enjoyment of it for me. I mean, yes, I'll be able to go back and watch that Miz and Rollins match in the future, probably more than one time, because that's how good it was. But at the same time, it's still too close to the pay-per-view for me to, I mean, I don't know, I'm going all over the place. But yeah, the match should have went on last, and it probably would have helped, but I don't know how much.
I mean, I don't even know if it necessarily needed to go on last. I think that it would have been a great mid-card, like right in the middle of the card, especially with just all the other matches compared to this one just seem to fall flat. So to start off with something maybe like a Daniel Bryan versus Big Cass, start off with that match, and then and then you could kind of keep the rest of the card as it was, but then have The Miz and Seth Rollins go on in the middle of the card. That revitalizes the crowd. That gets them ready for the second half of the pay-per-view. I mean, I don't know. It didn't go down that way, so I can't say one way or another if that would have been better. But just like I said, looking back on it, thinking about it, it seems like maybe that would have been better.
Do you guys think the reaction would have been better or worse for the pay-per-view overall if instead of the Roman match going on last, the championship match went on last, even with the wonky finish, because it was a championship match and it went on last? Do you think that would have lessened the blow because of Roman and
low blow?
Lessened the low.
Wow,
blow.
I didn't even think about that. Good pun. But if even, because we all know how much the hardcore, the diehards hate Roman Reigns, and having that go on last, if that didn't go on last, how much better would this have been viewed? Or would it not have been viewed any better? Do you think?
Having it end, I mean, it's weird enough having it end in a double countout and a no DQ match anyway, but maybe because this is a Backlash that you can end a pay-per-view that way, I still think the reaction would have not been necessarily favorable. But on a Backlash type of pay-per-view, that level, not a Big Four, Big Five, the first one kind of leading into the new year, I think it's okay to have that kind of finish on that type of pay-per-view. But I am in agreement with Chandler that especially when you take into account the way that they were going to have the match end anyway, just to get the crowd a good amount of hyped but not like worn out from having like basically a classic match that we'll probably be talking about this IC match between Rollins and Miz for years to come. And and one of the best IC matches of this decade. When you think of other IC matches from this decade, like there's a great ladder match between Ziggler and Brody Lee, I want to call him, but
Luke Harper.
Mm-hmm. A great ladder match between those guys in the IC match a few years ago. But I think like when this decade is said and done, like that's where this match will line up, is going to be with some of the best IC matches. But really, with everything taken into account, Daniel Bryan and Big Cass, especially having Daniel Bryan go over, I think getting the crowd in a good amount of warmed up, but also having that positive babyface result that you want. I think Bryan and Big Cass was the way to start the show. Obviously, you can't go back now, and we know what we know, but and maybe some of these matches were shortened because of how hot that first one was. And man, if you got a classic, you let it happen. But I think Bryan and Big Cass going on first might have been the way to go. The pay-per-view starts, Daniel Bryan's music hits, and you get that automatic pop. Plus, New Jersey is always a great crowd, whether it be Newark or Izod Center or whatever, The Rock or whatever they call it in Newark. That Big Cass and Daniel Bryan would have been the best case going on first.
I think you flip those two matches. Like I don't think you necessarily need to change much else on the card. But if you flip flop the Daniel Bryan, Big Cass, and the IC title Miz and Seth Rollins match, I think it's a completely different pay-per-view, and it has a better pace to it. And I think that a lot of the negatives that people are saying about the pay-per-view would still probably be said, but I feel like it would be less people saying it.
If that were the case, do you think we would have not seen people leaving at the main event, or was that destined to happen?
So like I said, flip flop those two matches, the Daniel Bryan Big Cass and the IC title match. Flip flop those, and then flip flop the WWE Championship match.
I missed that part. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that part.
No, I didn't say that.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm saying if you first of all flip flop the first two matches that I said, and then you flip flop the main event and the WWE title match, then you have a completely different pay-per-view. And I honestly, in that case, I don't think people would have been leaving as early as they did.
Because no one's going to be leaving a Shinsuke AJ main event.
No.
So I think that would have been the way to go. And another thing is maybe that, and I know this is now with Samoa Joe on SmackDown, this was in the first, stripped down, it wasn't a singular brand pay-per-view, that they decided to have multiple kind of inter-brand matches. But maybe they need to improve the situation with the main event and not have it Reigns and Joe if that's the way they're going to go with it. Because to me, the more like substantial rivalry that's been going on for longer, that makes more sense to have as the main event, would be Shinsuke and AJ. I think that was kind of a slight at this to not have it in the main event a little bit, just because that was so much more build as opposed to the 2 weeks we've had with Samoa Joe and Roman Reigns. And in the meantime, Samoa Joe has also had rivalries with two separate other, people or entities on different shows. So it was not like this was, this is the main event. They decided it was the main event because it was Roman Reigns. It wasn't the main event because it was supposed to be
there's no secret
the main
to
event. And that's why I think Shinsuke and AJ should have been last. And maybe you make the finish a little bit more important where it's not like a low blow double count out. It's a double count out where they both just were exhausted, and then I don't know, and then that leads into a future Iron Man match or something like that. I mean, obviously fantasy booking here, but
is it just me, or do they not normally do countouts in no DQ matches, or is this something that's been done?
I don't get
I
that.
just don't
I don't
remember
know.
it
I don't
or
like
something,
that. I don't get
never
that.
Seen
I
that,
thought no DQ meant no disqualifications, no rope breaks, no countouts. I thought no DQ meant
any of that.
That's
weapons involved, whatever it might be,
perception.
inside of the ring, outside of the ring.
If they wanted to do that finish, they should have done a last man standing match.
Yep.
Because then you can legit have people, because Shawn Michaels and Triple H did that at Royal Rumble 2004, where they beat the hell out of each other, and at the end, I think they hit each other at the same. I don't remember what happened. I think Shawn Michaels hit a super kick, and he was just bleeding all over the place, so he didn't have the energy, and neither of them got up. That's the way you can do that, but in a no DQ match to have a double count out, it just doesn't make sense to me. And you guys heard me defend AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura's first match, and I'll even defend everything in this match leading up to the finish. But that finish just does not work for me, and nothing that anyone can say is going to change my mind on that, because that's just a horrible way to end a no DQ match.
An Omega Okada 2 style time limit draw would be a much better finish to this. And I know we're not that far removed from that, but I think it would have gotten less backlash on Backlash about Backlash for that. If they had done a time limit issue as opposed to a low blow double count out in a no DQ match, or just don't call it a no DQ match, and maybe the referees back turn when they double low blow each other, and then then they do get a legit count out.
Yeah. As
opposed to doing it during a no DQ match, which at least to me, maybe it never crossed my mind before, but I thought that was, I guess, not a thing or unheard of.
Yeah, I think I'm agreeing with Andre too. Like I will defend the other 2 matches, and I will defend everything in this match, including the double low blow, because to me that was just awesome how that went down.
Yeah, of course.
But the fact that you have a no DQ match end in a double count out, just it's almost an oxymoron. Like you're telling me that this match has no disqualifications, which pretty much means no rules, but the rule of both guys being down for a count of 10 ends the match. That just it doesn't work for me, and clearly it doesn't work for a majority of wrestling fans out there. So I don't know. Other than making sure that this rivalry keeps going and keeping the title on AJ, I don't see what good it did. But even thinking about, after I just said that, even thinking about it, like there's other ways that you could have had it go to a draw and keep the title on AJ. So I'm just not a fan of how this match finished, especially because it was such a good match, which obviously it's going to be a good match. It's AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura, 2 of the greatest to ever do it, a couple of the best in the world right now. They're going to put on a good match no matter what the stipulation, no matter what company they're working under. It doesn't matter. These 2 are going to put on a good match together. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of the reasoning behind the finish.
I just don't get how whoever came up with this in the creative team, did they not talk to each other or what? Because it doesn't make, you come up with this. I don't know what came first. The decision probably the decision to make it a no DQ match probably came before the finish. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been a no DQ match. But just, how do you think of that finish and just say and go with it? Why not change it? I don't know. Last man standing match would have made all the sense in the world, and I don't know. That's ridiculous.
But it feels like too that's where it's going now. That their next match is going to have to be a last man standing.
But that
match.
Makes no sense, because what just happened was a last man standing match. So it's the same thing could happen again.
Yep.
Kayfabe, it doesn't make sense. It would have to be something else, like no count out. I don't know. Well, they kind of, I don't know. They'll get out of it because it's AJ and Shinsuke, and they're 2 of the greatest in the world. So they'll get out of it. But it was just kind of left a very bad taste in my mouth, almost as bad as the Roman finish.
The good news is I think they have 5 weeks to build towards a top level pay-per-view in a major city in Chicago. So I think that things, while we didn't get the pay-per-view that we wanted, certainly, and it was very much congested with Mania, Greatest Royal Rumble, and then Backlash. But to have 5 weeks of breathing room now, leading up to a big pay-per-view in Chicago, hopefully we get something closer to what we've been looking for the last 6 weeks when we get to mid-June, when Money in the Bank happens in Chicago, Illinois.
Yep, definitely looking forward to that. Moving on, let's switch gears a little bit here from the guys. Talk about the one of the women's matches, SmackDown Women's Championship match. You guys, Carmella went over Charlotte clean by herself. No iconics. No James Ellsworth. No outside interference whatsoever. She took advantage of Charlotte's injured leg, kicked her. Charlotte was on the second rope with her back to the ring. Carmella kind of kicked her leg out from under her and just rolled her up quickly for a 1-2-3. I did not see that coming. I 100% thought that Charlotte was going to win back her SmackDown Women's Championship.
Especially a year after Chin Sanity was running wild all over the WWE, brother. This is wild. This is maybe the big surprise of the night, I would say. For Carmella to, with no really like too much special antics or anything, Makes you wonder exactly where they're going with this. But good for Carmella to not just be that, okay, you wanted Money in the Bank and then take it away from her right away or win on some BS. So I think it makes Carmella a more formidable opponent when Flair or Asuka win it from Carmella down the road, probably between now and SummerSlam, I would guess.
I kind of wavered back and forth as to what I thought was going to happen going into the pay-per-view and going into the match. And my final decision in my head was I think Carmella's going to win, but I didn't think it was going to be clean. I thought it was going to be, based on the way they've been booking these two and the Iconics, I just assumed it was going to be the Iconics getting involved. So when she won clean, even though she did attack an injured leg, so that gives Charlotte kind of an out, I was still shocked. That was one of the first times that show where I think I audibly said something like, whoa. I think maybe on a couple of the bumps in the first match, the IC title match, I might have said something too. But that was the first time I really got up and said, whoa, and I was very shocked by it. But I don't mind it at all. It, as you said, it made Carmella more formidable. And Carmella's growing on me. I really like what she's doing. I really like her character and her attitude. And at first I didn't, but it works for her because it gets heat, and I think it gets the right kind of heat, especially now that she's got the title and she's got a legit win over Charlotte under her belt, which goes to show how important a win can be, because Charlotte just beat Asuka and then Carmella beat Charlotte. So, I mean, that's huge. That's huge not just for Carmella, but that's huge for the Iconics too, storyline-wise. It just props to Charlotte Flair because she's helping make other stars in the women's division on SmackDown.
Mella is money, and boy, if you guys, I don't know if you guys caught the after show, the post show, but Mella was just moonwalking and trash talking the whole time. Man, she said I beat Charlotte Flair probably about 50 times in a span of 2 or 3 minutes. It was hilarious. But I mean, what would you expect? What do you expect from Carmella? Any besides that? Nothing less. So yeah, definitely big props to Carmella for getting that clean victory over Charlotte. The Raw Women's Championship match was I feel like that match was kind of just what I expected of it. It was a good match. It wasn't a bad match by any means. It had a lot of back and forth to it, and there were a couple times where it looked like Alexa was gonna regain the title, but eventually Nia prevails, and I don't know how I feel about this whole fat shaming, bullying campaign, anti-bullying, whatever you want to call it, campaign that they have going with Alexa and Nia. I just don't think that it's necessary for these two. They're both good enough competitors. They have good enough chemistry. I don't think there's really a need to take it to that point, but for whatever reason, the powers that be sure feel that way. What are you guys' thoughts on this match and just everything, like I said, the whole like fat shaming and anti-bullying and all that type of stuff that surround these two right now?
I think this comes off as a bit of a miss. I think you're right. They don't need that angle. It did add a little bit to the fuel to the fire for WrestleMania. You didn't necessarily have to continue that route at this point. I would have liked to see Bliss hold on to the title another month longer just to really solidify her. Not that she needs it. She's obviously, once again, since the original brand split of summer of 2016, I think it's still her and Braun as the MVPs. But I would have liked to see Alexa Bliss get it for maybe another month. But I also think that Bliss will win it back from Nia at some point, once again, between now and the end of the summer. So I'm not too hurt about it. And it hopefully will help build Nia Jax a little bit. The promo afterwards came off a little bit stale or rehearsed. Yeah, and it didn't come off as like she was feeling it. If you go back to Elimination Chamber, Alexa Bliss's post-win in the Elimination Chamber where she retained her title against 5 or 6 other women felt more legit, even though she turned it back into a heel promo. She kind of reversed the script on us. That even Alexa Bliss playing, kayfabe playing a heel or a face as a heel came off as more legit than Nia Jax's did after she won the title on Sunday.
I definitely agree with that, and I don't put the blame on Nia Jax. She was reading something.
No, right.
She was not forced. I don't want to sound like that. She was doing what she was supposed to do and reading the script and playing her part. The angle itself, it had its moments, some good, some bad, most bad. The good thing is that at least the bully in this storyline is getting her just desserts or just deserves or whatever the saying is. I don't know. The bully being Alexa Bliss. But it's an angle that needs to be dropped right now, and just both of them need to move on. I mean, I don't mean drop it cold, but you can move on from it in a quick way, and then it just needs to be something in the past, because I don't like Nia Jax delivering those kind of promos. I don't like the fat shaming angel. I don't like it, and I understand that both women might be cool with it or whatever, but I just think it has more misses than hits.
I did enjoy some of the Alexa Bliss promos about her being at Disneyland, getting on the adult rides, and needing a kids menu at the restaurant. I love stuff like that. But
those were some of the hits.
I think the fat shaming to Nia Jax is unnecessary, and she's kind of a fox. If I was not already if I was not already dating Peyton Royce, I would consider Nia Jax as my next girlfriend.
Yeah, and if I wasn't with Mandy Rose, then I mean, maybe I can make time for her too.
That's my side chick, man. Why don't you lay off?
Yeah, all right. Moving on here.
Oh, wow.
As I said earlier, one of the weirdest, funniest.
I'm just goofing. New boot goofing.
One of the weirdest, funniest, just off the wall segments, clearly of the night, but just that I've seen in a while from the WWE, was Elias's concert, where just time and time again he got interrupted by superstar after superstar, and it got to the point where it looked like Rusev and Aiden English, aka Rusev Day, were going to come down and possibly challenge Elias to a match. But then you have the New Day come out. You have No Way Jose with the Conga line come out. And Titus Worldwide and Breezango are a part of the Conga line. And as they are circling around the ring, dancing and stuff, out of nowhere, Bobby Roode pops into the ring and hits a glorious DDT and joins the Conga line as they all go back up to the top of the ramp, and then they all do the glorious pose together. This to me, as weird and out of place as it felt on the card of the pay-per-view, this was one of those things that this is showing the good potential of having dual branded pay-per-views, because these are all superstars from both shows, and these are some of the most entertaining superstars that are on the roster, and the fact that they were all able to work together, it was pretty fun to see how it all came together. It was weird, but it was a lot of fun, and I definitely was entertained and laughed at it. What did you guys think about this segment? Tony, I don't even know if you saw it, but Andre?
I loved it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was one of the better moments of the pay-per-view. And one thing that you forgot to mention, and I'm now wondering if this even happened or if I'm just imagining it, but did Bobby Roode at one point not twerk at Rusev Day?
Yeah,
lift
he did.
up his robe and
He
twerk?
did.
Okay. Yes,
Well,
that was great. That whole segment was great.
I think that the reason you can't remember is because everyone had to be on drugs to maybe enjoy that segment, or maybe just that the writers were on drugs when they wrote it. I'm not really sure, but I'm pretty sure that the New Day was just New Day goofing.
I'm just goofing. New boot goofing.
Okay, I think if you take out Bobby Roode, everything is okay. I think the addition of Bobby Roode and twerking and dancing did not do any favors for him. Yes, it was funny, and maybe it did show a speck of another side of Bobby Roode that we haven't seen so far in WWE, whether it be NXT or on the main roster of SmackDown, and now a few weeks or a month of Raw. But I think the Bobby Roode part was weird. I was like, this is very weird. But everything else to me, I had no complaints about, and it was a fun segment. So I'm not like upset or up in arms as a Bobby Roode fan. What the hell? But I think that once again, a heel turn for Bobby Roode would be great. This was a little bit weird. Everything else to me, I loved everything else to me. I wasn't. There was no really bones to pick for me about it other than that.
I think I kind of agree with that. I feel like Bobby Roode, out of everyone involved in this segment, Bobby Roode kind of felt the most out of place. I mean, obviously Titus Worldwide and Breezango coming down the conga line with No Way Jose, like I can see that. And you had Rusev you had Aiden English kind of into it, like kind of dancing around, but Rusev was like, telling him not to. And as the conga line goes past Rusev and they're all trying to touch him and high five him, he's kind of pulling away from him. So Rusev stayed Rusev that entire time. It's not like he had a smile on his face and was dancing. He was kind of just like over it the whole time, which is what you would expect from him. But yeah, to have Bobby Roode be a part of this and to be smiling and dancing, it was a little bit out of place. But that's not to say that it was bad, because I was, as I said and as you said, Frony, I was entertained by it.
Here's why the Bobby Roode segment part didn't bother me. Because he has been out of place for his entire face run. And I have not enjoyed
I'll give you that.
his entire face run until this moment. So if this is the one thing about his face run that I enjoy, other than what he does bell to bell in between the ropes, of course, then I'm happy. But I still want to see a heel turn, as you, Frony, had said earlier. But this was his best. This was his best work as a face in my mind. That's why I don't mind it.
Okay, just a random question that's just popped into my mind just now. With the Miz Taraj having nothing to do, would you guys like to see them back up Bobby Roode if suppose a heel turn or not? Is that something that you think would be fitting to put Bobby Roode, maybe push him up on a pedestal a little bit and to have two followers, a bit of a faction of sorts?
I mean, I could see it, but at the same time, especially as soon after right now that they have split from the Miz, it's gonna feel like
A
the
diet
Miz
version.
Yeah, it's gonna feel like Miz Taraj 2.0, and it's just gonna. I don't think that. I think maybe if there's more time, and maybe if they change if the Miz Taraj change kind of their gimmick from being the followers to like being a prominent tag team on their own, and then they're paired with Bobby Roode so that they're all kind of on the same level, then maybe you could make it work, but that's going to take some time. As of right now, I don't think it would work.
So Andre, you want to see them in that Congo line back on Sunday?
No, not those two. If because if they're gonna do the Miz Taraj Light or Diet Miz Taraj, there's only one way to do it properly, and that is to have them back up none other than someone who's not on the roster, but Damian Sandow, a.k.a. Damian Mizdow. That's the only way Diet Miz Taraj would work. Other than that, they have to, if they're going to be in a group with someone, it has to be different. The identity has
I was
to be
over here
different.
like Gilbert. Say Gilbert. Say Gilbert.
Could you guys imagine if Mizdow was still on the roster and this entire time that the Miz had the Miz Taraj, Mizdow had his own
Love him.
Mizdow Taraj?
Love him, man.
Oh, man. Like, who would it even
Who would
be?
it
Like,
be?
the Revival? I don't know. Someone
It'd have to
completely...
be someone. I think it'd have to be two people from the cruiserweight division, because they have to be a little smaller
Oh,
versions.
that's a true story.
A couple
there.
of the minis.
Oh,
I don't know about
goodness.
that small.
All right, so after Elias's concert went awry, we had Big Cass and Daniel Bryan. We've kind of already touched on it, but I just wanted to mention, as I said earlier, this was both of their first single matches back from two devastating injuries. Daniel Bryan's was pretty much a career-ending injury, and Big Cass was definitely a career-threatening injury, but they're both back to in-ring competition now, and I think that they did a really, really good job building these two with the backstage attacks, and definitely with Big Cass on the microphone the past couple of weeks. Just absolutely killing it on the mic and saying why he's so much better than someone that's the likes of a Daniel Bryan, and the fact that he's been overlooked. They both were cleared to come back to in-ring competition on the same day, but there was zero mention of Big Cass's return on that day because it was all about Daniel Bryan, and you can't blame the guy for being upset about that. But when it came down to it, he tapped in an instant to the yes lock and then was a sore loser and attacked Daniel Bryan after the match. I think that this match may not have been as good of a match as the Intercontinental Championship match, but with the storyline that's around it and what happened, the finish to this match, and then what happened after the match ended, they did a fantastic job with this.
I think it wasn't as good, but I think the only reason that was the case is because it had, I think it was under 10 or 12 minutes for that match.
It wasn't long.
They didn't have
it
that
wasn't a
much
long
time.
match, and it didn't take long for Cass to tap.
But having said that, I have a hot take on Daniel Bryan. He has only had 7 matches, maybe 8, since he's come back. Let me see. He had the WrestleMania. He had the Greatest Rumble.
I'm sorry, I just have to.
A
I have
couple
to
tag
interrupt
matches.
you. But
It was him and AJ versus Rusev Day.
AJ and Daniel Bryan did have a one-on-one match, so
AJ
this wasn't Daniel Bryan's first one-on-one match.
Pay-per-view
And the
match, though.
SmackDown
Yeah.
right after
Yeah.
in New Orleans.
It was his first pay-per-view. Excuse me on that one.
Yes.
Sorry.
Because when they were, because I just listened to part of Daniel Bryan on Y2J's podcast, and he had said that he had 5 matches, and that statement was made in Saudi Arabia. So he's had, I think, 2 or 3 when you talk about the Rusev match from Tuesday too. But he's only had a handful of matches, less than 10, since his return from his hiatus, his semi-retirement, his sabbatical, whatever you want to call it. But he is already. People are maybe people aren't going to agree with me, but he's already the best wrestler in the world. He was there when he retired, and he's just as good. So he's, in my mind, he has to be back at the top of that list, even though he may not have the body of work recently as guys like Omega or Styles or anybody else. But he was the best when he was forced to leave, and he's still the best.
Next week on the show, too, if you guys tune in 8 o'clock right here on 103.5 The Sun, we're going to be talking about who exactly the 5 best wrestlers. Each of us are going to give our top 5 lists of who we think the best 5 wrestlers are in the world right now. We've teased this the last few weeks, but I think next week with the breathing room we have before the next pay-per-view gives us a perfect opportunity to finally get us not just here from in the studio, but also Zach Wagner, and Ben Wong, and all the other guys that help out behind the scenes with the show.
Talk to Dan Allies.
We'll have a number of different inputs about who are the top 5 wrestlers in the world right now. And seeing at somebody's list, none of us have the same exact list. No one has the same 5 wrestlers, I don't believe, especially not in order. And I think each of us has a different perspective and different guys that we would put on there right now for different reasons. And it really is a fun conversation to have leading into, we're still at the beginning of the season for WrestleMania 2019. So now I think really is a good time to do that. So we'll check that out. And Andre's putting Daniel Bryan at number 1. There's reasons I think that's very much warranted, but I also wonder if enough time has gone by to decide that after. I mean, it's only been 4 or 5 weeks, but Daniel Bryan looks as good as ever. So in that regard, I can't argue that too much.
He literally looks like he hasn't taken any time off from being in the ring. So I don't know if I would put him at my number 1 just because of what other people have done in his absence. But it's hard not to. It's hard not to say that he isn't the best in the entire world right now, because he looks just as good as he did before he had to retire. So
if LeBron James had to retire and then was able to come back, and he came back and he was the exact same LeBron James, even if it was 25% worth of the season that he played, you would say he was the best already, unless you're a LeBron hater. Then LeBron haters can never be... Facts don't sway LeBron haters. But if you're not a LeBron hater, you can say that he's been gone, but he's just as good as he was. He has to be the best.
Hey, that happened with Michael Jordan. That's literally a thing.
That's
literally a thing that happened. And baseball players also in the 30s and 40s who had to leave to go to World War II would come back and were still... there's some guys you look at and be like, oh, even though he went to fight the World War, came back and was still the best baseball player. Ted Williams, I'm gonna mess up names right now.
The thing
so I
about
don't want to get
Jordan,
too into
though,
that.
is when he came back for that first half of the season, he still wasn't Jordan until the next year, and that's not the case with Daniel Bryan. I know wrestling is different than basketball.
Sure, but still, no, it's
but the amount of time that Daniel Bryan took off, and the injury that he had, the fact that he's come back and he's still at the top of his game. It's a bold statement, but at the same time, it's hard to argue against it.
And to your point about this match, I do think this was the right way to go. You put Daniel Bryan over in his first pay-per-view singles match. You still have Big Cass look strong by getting him at the end of the match. Didn't have to be too long of a match. Both guys look good, just coming off injuries. And we know that this is somewhat of a stepping stone rivalry, as good as it has been over the last 3-4 weeks. It still is ultimately leading to The Miz and Daniel Bryan down the road. But for right now, I think this story has been very well told. So a really good job on WWE. I know sometimes we will crap on the writing team or Road Dogg or whoever else. But right now, Daniel Bryan and Big Cass, I think they're taking the right steps so far with this. And hopefully this ultimately culminates in The Miz and Daniel Bryan.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how the rest of this rivalry with Daniel Bryan and Big Cass plays out, and I'm really looking forward to see how it leads into the Miz and Bryan, especially since they're on the same show. Now we're gonna switch gears, guys, to what we've all been waiting for. Roman Reigns versus Samoa Joe in the main event.
So can I get up and leave the podcast early? Bye,
That's
guys.
fine. That's fine. Everyone else did at the pay-per-view. I wouldn't be mad at you. This match, it's what, unfortunately, it's what you would have expected out of this match. It was a lot of Samoa Joe looking like a badass, as he does, but then it was a lot of Roman Reigns going for the same moves, going for the spear, missing it, going for a Superman punch, missing it, and then finally hitting both of those moves. And just the fall. I think what's worse to me than this match and the finish to this match and not having Joe go over was the fallout of this match, which was on Raw the next night, where Samoa Joe cut a backstage promo and he's blaming the behind the scenes, the backstage powers that be for the position that he's in, for being held down and for not being the current Universal Champion, and saying how he's going to qualify for Money in the Bank, which he didn't tonight, or he didn't Monday night, but there's unfortunately still time for him to. But saying that qualifying for Money in the Bank is going to be, and then him winning the Money in the Bank is going to be how he sticks it to the powers that be, and how he's going to get the title that's rightfully his. And there's just no way I'm buying this as a fan. There's absolutely no way that I'm buying Roman Reigns being held back or held down by the powers that be, and they're trying to get kind of a Stone Cold Steve Austin feel to it, where he's going against the authority figures and he's the blue collar guy, but that's not the case with Roman Reigns. We all know that he is Vince's hand chosen, hand picked guy, and it's not working for me.
This is a huge problem for Roman Reigns, because if you listen to that promo, even though I disagreed with what he said because it's so silly, because he's not being held down, he's actually the complete opposite. But the thing is, he now delivers a really good promo.
He does.
And
he does.
It doesn't matter.
He does a lot of things really well right now at this point in his career. He wrestles better. He delivers promos better. He even emotes within the promos and the matches. His facial and body expression, it's better than what it was. But that can all be better, and if you're trying to push this exact angle that they're pushing, I'm still not buying it.
And this goes back to a few years ago when I said, if they keep trying to do this, and not just me, I don't want to sound like, oh, I said it, but a lot of people were saying, if they keep doing this, even if Roman Reigns does improve on his weaknesses, we're not going to accept him. And
we're kind of at that point now.
We're at that point, and we're at a spot where, in my mind, I could be wrong, but it just feels like it's do or die, and WWE has to make a decision, and someone being Meek Mahan. I haven't brought that out recently since he brought the Woken Universe to TV, but the Roman Reigns things deserves me bringing that back out again. But his stubbornness, at one point he's going to have to see it, because look at what just happened recently in the past few weeks to few months here. The main event of WrestleMania, the grandest stage of all, the most important show, the biggest show of the year, he got booed. That whole main event got booed out of the building. At the pay-per-view Backlash, people were leaving early. And then on Monday Night Raw, Jinder Mahal, who's roundly hated by everybody except for me, got the biggest babyface pop I've ever heard him get when he cost Roman Reigns on Monday Night Raw. Mr. Meek Mahan, the Roman Reigns experiment is not working if you consider all those factors.
So I'm not the in-house Roman Reigns hater in the way that Andre is, but I'm actually willing to give him less credit than you guys are. And yes, he has improved in the ring. He has improved on the mic. Some of his better matches have come within the last year. I think some of that had to do with opponent. And some of his best promos have happened within the last 5 to 6, maybe even 8 months. Once again, I think some of that had to do with opponent or someone else making him rise to the occasion, like a John Cena, and kind of forcing his hand into getting better. And sometimes that's the case. You know, we all do our best work under pressure in some cases. But as a wrestling fan, I've had my intelligence insulted enough times. And for them to play Roman Reigns as that kind of stone cold heel is laughable to the point where I'm not even insulted by it. It is just like it is a joke. It is a joke to me what they were trying to do. And you and I looked at each other on Monday Night, Chandler, like, really, this really is the angle they're going to take with him, to that he's been shorthanded. He's been slighted. He has been bamboozled, run amok.
No,
I mean, come on now. Let's. That was enough. The one time you guys did it, where he went in the backstage, and it was kind of fun because he went in the backstage. He said gorilla position, and Shane was there, and McMahon was there, even though Stephanie and Angle run Raw, and maybe because it was kind of we never really see that kind of stuff before, that it made it different. But at this point, it's really gone overboard, and it's beyond disappointing.
If he has a program with Jinder and Jinder is received as the babyface by the fans, do you think that is the last straw for Vince?
So this is what I think about the Jinder thing, and this is one of the good things about that I thought with Jinder coming to Monday Night Raw, is that from McMahon's perspective, potentially one of the few guys that you could line up against Roman Reigns, where maybe the crowd would. At least in terms of just a short-term rivalry, would maybe tilt their scales because of some of the hatred towards Jinder Mahal, that some of those fans would be Roman Reigns fans, at least for a certain time. I thought that was maybe a good idea because that there are fans, even your internet smarks, who for whatever reason hate Jinder Mahal. But it is funny to see that even then on Monday night that he still got that Jinder Mahal was the babyface without a doubt.
And I loved it. The Jinder mark that I am, I soaked in every second of hearing it, and I rewound it a couple times to hear the crowd pop when he grabbed Roman Reigns' leg. And I have no problem with this feud, even if it means he's going to lose, just because I get to hear for at least a match or two in a few weeks, I get to hear what a babyface Jinder Mahal would sound like. Hopefully. I don't know what the schedule is and what kind of towns they're going to, but odds are, the way things have been going recently for Roman, it's going to be Roman as the heel.
And to answer your question, Andre, I absolutely do not think that this would sway Vince from trying to push Roman as the babyface. Even if you were to put him in a program with Jinder Mahal, like you said, Frony, this Jinder would probably be the best person on the roster right now, at least on Raw, to try to get the fans more behind Roman Reigns and booing Jinder, just at least if not for just that match alone, but especially after what happened on Raw, I don't think that would be the case. And again, to answer Andre's question, I don't think that this would change the way he views Roman Reigns in the position that he's in.
Who's the next best person to make Jinder more of a face in terms of heel face? If Jinder isn't going to make him a face, does he have to face Alexa Bliss? Like, what does he got to do?
The only person as of right now in all of WWE, including NXT,
Shayna. Sorry, Chandler absolutely.
All right,
despises
that's
her.
it for our show, folks. Catch us next week. No, it is someone from NXT. Surprisingly, it is someone from NXT.
Okay,
Tommaso Ciampa.
Okay.
Nobody's gonna cheer Tommaso Ciampa right now.
They
with
will
everything
against Roman.
No, I
love this.
I highly doubt that.
I wish this was something we could see.
I do wish that we could see this.
They would pop so hard. The NXT marks that are in the tenants at Raw would be like, "Oh my gosh, Ciampa's here! He's gonna screw Roman. We hate Roman." Oh, nothing's gonna work.
When you bring up it
has to be Satan himself. Even then, he might be the babyface.
Satan goes over.
Oh man, fantastic! That is great. Honestly, I think that Satan would get cheered in a match over Roman Reigns. Okay, truthfully, this time I think that does about wrap it up for us here on the Schmozcast at the 103.5 The Sun Community Radio Station. Check us out next week. As Frony said, we'll have our top 5 lists, and we'll also be kind of talking about how Money in the Bank is stacking up. Until then, you can find us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at the Schmozcast. Fellas, any parting words?
Hell yeah.
Delete.
Perfect. All right, you guys, for Anthony and Andre, I'm Chandler. Thanks for listening.